my goodness! Holy sh!
Folks, I'd like to take this opportunity to officially introduce you to the Ranchero. The story of this started back about 1990. I had the idea that a 57 Ford would look pretty damn cool on a big old four-wheel drive frame. As you can see, I was right. I never did find a Ranchero. I kind of gave up on the idea. I had a couple of false starts, actually one that I can think of. A guy wanted to go 50-50 on it. He had the Ranchero body and I had the truck chassis, but I couldn't see that ending very well. Forgot all about it till 2 years ago at a swap meet. A guy had a board up with various vehicles for sale and had this Ranchero on there. I went and looked at it, and as you can see, it's now mine. Like I said, I bought it 2 years ago, and I don't think I've actually done any real work on it in over a year due to various other things needing to be done. And another issue is I came into this last summer, came into this 2008 F-250 chassis, and I think it's going to be a much better chassis for it. But right now, today, I'm going to lift the body off of this 78 frame and see how well it's going to fit on this. Obviously, the wheelbase is too long, but before I do that, let's take a look at this. It's on a 78 F-250 frame, but this F-250 had the Dana 60 front axle. It's got, well, like I said already, it's got the Dana 60 front axle. It's got a 14 bolt in the rear with a homebrew disc brake set up in there. And I don't know if you can see it, probably not. Let's go around and take a look in the back. Not that you've never seen disc brakes before. Just some GM brackets that are welded onto the housing. Both axles are geared 456. The front has a Spartan locker. The rear has a torque locker. I shortened the frame 10 inches. And as you can see, I didn't do it to match the wheelbase of the Ranchero. I did it mostly just to get the excess frame tucked in fairly close to the body. I figured with the way the quarter panels were rusted on this, I really didn't need to match the wheelbase. I was just gonna, my plan was to come in here, just take this on out there and just kind of make a new wheel well. I've got a 400 Ford engine that I've been putting together. It has not aluminum, Australian cylinder heads on it. Got a lot of goodies in it. Gonna hook it up to this ZF 5-speed. There's a new Process 205 transfer case tucked in there. Got the drive shafts made for it. On these Ford 60s, they're known for breaking the knuckles. So I have those all plated. And on this side, because there's no lift, it's all stock, including the steering. And because the steering forces for both tires go through this knuckle, I don't know if you can see it in there. I had the knuckle, the cap and the knuckle machined for a 1/4 inch keyway on both sides. So yeah, it's not just the studs here taking the force. There's also that key stock in there. One of the reasons why I think the 2005, it's a 2008 frame over there. One of the main reasons I think it would be better. Obviously the Dana 60 in it is much superior to this one. Other than people would argue the ball joint issue, which I don't think it's really an issue myself. I think ball joints are easier to work on and they're plenty strong. The only issue I have with it is the unit bearing hubs. I kind of wish it had the 8 on 6.5 bolt pattern, but I can re-drill that if I really want to. And the unit bearings, yeah, like the ball joint issue, that's not really so much a problem anymore. Manufacturers have kind of gotten on the ball where they're a lot better. And another big thing where I think this frame would be better is it's wider. Now, like I said, that has a 205 in it right now. And the 205, it's a tough transfer case. I can't deny that, but the low range gearing in them is just awful. 1.96. And yeah, this will open up a lot more options for transfer cases. I can't think of, I got a couple already. Borg Warner. Well, one's out of a Super Duty, not the one that came with this. And another one's out of a 97. I can't remember the names and numbers of what they are, but they're, for low range, they're way better than that, and they would get probably marginally a little better mileage. Not that that's really going to be a mileage machine as it anyway. I'm gonna get busy here and get her lifted up and try to drop it on this frame, see how she fits. If it fits pretty good, then yep, I'm starting over with this one. I've got I'll obviously use this front axle. I'm not sure about the rear yet. I don't really have a problem with the Sterling axle in it, but I do have a rear axle. I think it's an AAM from a 2005 Dodge 1-ton. And yeah, it's got the 8 on 6.5 pattern, so I could either re-drill these front hubs to match the AAM or just run this. I believe the AAM is going to be a little stronger than this Sterling, but we'll see how the body fits first and take it from there. Okay, so after giving it some more thought, I decided I wanted to put the front clip back on the RONchero and double check that I had the wheel where I wanted it in the fender before I actually made my final decision to run this 08 chassis. I'm pretty happy with it, so I think I'm going to go ahead with it. I just wanted to show you how much better it looked with the front clip on it. Of course, you're going to have to picture this on I think I'm going to run 46-inch military surplus tires. Another thing that I really like about this 08 frame, because I really wanted to run this front bumper. I think it really helps the lines of the car, and it was going to be hard to do with the 78 frame because of the way the frame kind of got up there and fouled with getting the bumper mounted. And as you can see, there's plenty of room to mount the bumper. And obviously the bumper's not going to be any sort of a strength advantage, it's just for looks. The frame sits down low enough on this, I'll be able to build, I don't know, I'm thinking I could either, the way that frame dips right there, and the only thing mounted to it is the sway bar, or the anti-sway bar. I could either move the sway bar up, well, let me back up here. If I took and just cut the frame here and built it out straight, and then I could move the sway bar, anti-sway bar up with it and just put links right here, or just get rid of the anti-sway bar altogether. But I think I'm going to wait on that till I get the body mounted permanently, because yeah, then I would run into the same thing I was getting with the 78 frame. And like I said, with this frame, yeah, there's pros and cons either way, but the frame seems fairly stout the way it is. I could just make a cross member up here underneath the original bumper and mount some tow hooks in it, or even that would be a great space to mount a winch. So I think I'm probably going to go this way and just keep the frame the way it is. One of the bad things about this 08 frame over the 78, just through dumb luck on the 78 frame, the original body mounts on the Ranchero body fit right on the cab mounts on the 78 frame. This one, yeah, it doesn't line up, but yeah, that's a minor problem considering all the pros that this 08 frame brings with it. I've already decided I had anywhere from a range of 17 to 21 inches to cut off the back. I think I'm going to go 20 inches. Just like the 78 frame, the rear wheel won't be centered in the original wheel well position on this body, but that doesn't matter because I will be, you know, cutting that out to match. Might have to actually rebuild the wheel housings on the inside as well, but no big deal. This body's rough enough that I don't feel bad at all about cutting on it. You might have noticed the front when I showed it to you. Yeah, when you picture this with like a 44 to 46 inch tire, it's, yeah, there's going to be clearance problems here, but I'm probably going to cut, well, I know I am going to cut right along in there, trim that off right in there to make clearance for the tires. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I do have a lift kit for this frame. Whether I'll use it or not, I don't know. So I'll get the body mounted. I'm gonna try to get this frame in the shop before it gets dark tonight. Get started on shortening it. I'll get the body mounted. I am gonna run the AAM 11.5 in the rear and re-drill these front Super Duty hubs for 8 on 6.5. So what I need to do before I actually narrow this up, or shorten it up, I guess, there's a lot of crap on this that needs to be removed. You got some emissions crap, there's some exhaust there, whole bunch of fuel lines and wiring that I will not be using, and it was just going to get in my way. So I'll probably spend a couple hours here cleaning this whole frame off the crap that I don't need. Got the frame all cleaned up, swept up the debris off the floor. I sure wanted to take this big, I don't know, crossmember pan, whatever you call it, out at the rear. But it looks like it adds a lot of strength back there. And the reason I wanted to take it out is I've got this big old honking gas tank that I bought for that 78 frame. I'd like to use it back there. But the frame's a little narrow anyway. It'd be a lot easier to take that whole structure out of there now while the frame is bare. But I think I'll leave it in there for strength purposes for now is the thought. I might change my mind later or come up with a different place to put a gas tank or something. These brackets here, I decided I was going to leave them. Hopefully I don't bang my head on them several times, but I think those will make a good starting point for some sort of a hitch. I think this was a railroad truck. Well, I'm pretty sure it was a railroad truck. When I went to pick it up, there were some brackets like that on the front that I had to take off because they wouldn't even clear my trailer, getting it winched onto the trailer. And I'll be taking the 20 inches out right here in this part of the frame here. It's nice and level and straight. It wouldn't surprise me if I have to lose this cross member here, because yeah, it'll be screwed clear up here, and I bet the transfer case will hit it. But there's plenty more cross members here, especially if I leave that one in the rear. Okay, I'm going to base my measurements off of the center of this rivet on each side that's holding the top of the radius arm bracket on. I've went from the center of that, I went 10 inches over here. I already cleaned up the rough areas so I could see the marker line better. I've clamped these two pieces of angle iron here in order to assure that my line will be as square as I possibly can make it. Same deal with the top of the flange on the frame. Got these clamped here. They don't have to be straight vertically or anything. They just have to give you a reference point here. Two of them to butt your square up against. You know the drill. Wash, rinse, repeat. Do it over here. Except from the rivet, I'll measure 30 inches over to this spot. And then, yeah, do the whole thing again. Everything on the other side and bottom side of the flange. The way I've done this in the past, I always start out with the weight on the wheels, axles, whatever, nothing holding it up. And I will get underneath there and make my very bottom cuts first, all of them. Obviously you don't want to do those ones last because you don't want to be underneath there if something goes wrong and the thing falls on you. But by the time, yeah, you're going to want to be making your final cuts while you're up here and comfortable, instead of being underneath there and worrying about if something's going to fall on you. But by the time you're up here doing your last cuts comfortably, you should have everything supported by then. Another reason to get underneath there and do the bottom cuts first with the weight sitting on the axles is you want the frame to just kind of, the weight of the frame to spread out a little bit, so it's not trying to bind up your wheels, which you really shouldn't do just making the bottom cuts by themselves. Steve! Hey, how are you? Come see me? Thank you. Okay, so once it's supported on both sides, you're going to want to pick, for your own reasons, whichever. You don't have to cut all four at once. At this point, I'm going to cut here, these two up the front. And then once the front is free, I'll roll it forward a couple inches, and this will just be supported by the jack, and I can cut it off. You could go either way, really. I think I'm just going to do the front ones first, though. Now, for the top ones. This side dropped, so I probably should have had a little more tension here. A little less up front. Now that you've got the front half disconnected, you can cut these pretty easy because there's no tension on them. They're just hanging. Okay, so I'm back at it again tonight. What I've done so far is I've beveled out the frame rails. I don't know if that's showing up too well. I didn't figure I needed to show me grinding it. There's only so much grinding footage you're going to tolerate. I'm ready to slide the front to meet the rear. I've lowered that jack stand a little bit, and let's see how it goes. So apparently, on the driver's side frame rail, putting the square on it and eyeballing it, it looks nice and straight. And the passenger side, yeah, there's a gap there. It looks like about a 3/16 difference. I'm guessing the frame just kind of sprung open when I cut it apart. I'm going to have to come up with a way to suck the frame rails together on the front and get everything to line up. And start hitting it with a square everywhere I can think of. Get it all leveled up and burn it down. Okay, here's what I came up with. Just a chain running across there. It's got a hook in it with some threads on that side. And got it pulled down. It's looking pretty decent on this side. Looking pretty decent on this side. I do have a gap in the bottom. Right there, more so on this side than this side. But to fix that gap, I can't quite get it. There. Anyway, to fix that gap, all I should have to do is raise this jack stand and it'll close that gap up. I'm sure they'll do them both to match, but yeah, this side over here is touching now. So that's probably all I'm going to get out of that. Come on, focus, where are you at? Too close, too close. There, that's good as it's going to get. I'm going to go around and check everything else up with the square and eyeball it real good, and we'll see. Okay, I'm getting closer. I had to pick the rear of the frame up to bring the whole works up. I am actually perfect right in through about here. But yeah, the bottom is off a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of heavy tacks, about one there, and maybe right there, so I don't lose what I have right there. Okay, I ground that bottom out and put a ratchet strap pulling the two halves of the frame together. Tighten up the ratchet strap, release the vice grip here, and it slid together. My measurement was still like 1/8 of an inch off, but I think the error here is in the rivets, because I was going by the center of this rivet, and if you look at some of these other rivets, they are not symmetrical, especially that one. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but it is really whoppered by the way I suppose where it was riveted at the factory, they're not centered. I went ahead and I measured from various holes punched in the frames to other holes in the frame back here, and everything is dead nuts on. Everything else I can measure that has, a matching hole on the other side of the frame. The only problem I'm really running into now is there's a gap right here when I put the straight edge across it. So what I'm going to do is put a floor jack under here and just pick up on that a little bit. Just on this driver's side frame rail. Hope I can get that leveled out. Looks good. I'll get some tack welds on it and start burning it all in place. All right, that did the trick. Driver's side is pretty much perfect near as I can tell. The straight edge, yeah, everything's lining up. That did open up a little bit of a gap on top, but I ain't worried about that. It just gives me more weld penetration. The only issue I have now on the passenger side, it is this, let's see here. The rear frame rail is sticking out this way. So I'm going to go ahead and tack the driver's side in several places and then come over here and see if I can't find a way to get this, I don't know, the camera's not going to pick it up. You really need the straight edge on it to tell. Yeah, once I get the other, watch the fingers there. Once I get the other, the driver's side frame rail all tacked in place, I'll come back over here, see if I can't find a way to get this corner pushed in a little bit. Other than that, I think it's perfect, or as perfect as I'm going to get it, using just a straight edge and vice grips and clamps and a couple pieces of angle iron and a ratchet strap. So my solution to get this frame rail sitting nice and straight that way was I needed to clamp another piece of angle iron in there. So I needed to rob it from this side, and since I was already happy with the driver's side, I went ahead and welded it, just so I could use that clamp and piece of angle iron. Sure enough, it pulled it out straight. Probably not going to show on the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and burn this one in place, and it'll be permanent. I know typically when you do something like this with a frame, it's traditional to put an extra plate in this area. I'm not going to do that for now. I might later. This frame is 1/4 inch thick and it's beveled, and my penetration is real good on my welds. But the main thing I'm not going to do anything now is my crossmember mounts right here. I don't know if that's going to be the place where the crossmember is going to land once I get my engine and transmission in it. But yeah, I don't want to have a reinforcement plate here getting in the way of me mounting a crossmember. So once I have the engine transmission transfer case finalized, then I might consider going back and putting a reinforcing plate on there, depending on what kind of room I've got. It's out in the open. It won't be that hard to do. Yeah, but better to hold off on that now instead of having to try to remove that plate or make heavy modifications to a crossmember later on. All right, it's all welded up. Kind of felt like I was off my, I'm not going to show you the welds. Some of my upside down ones left a little bit desired until I got up and changed the settings on the welder. You're just going to have to watch the rest of the build videos and hope you can spot them. Right now I'm going to go ahead and pull this Sterling axle out. These are quite possibly the easiest U-bolts I've ever removed. Well, you'd think I'd breathed enough grinder dust over the last couple days to satisfy me, but apparently not. This is my Dodge AAM 11.5 rear axle I'll be using. This brake is stuck. I'm assuming it's the emergency brake inside, so I got to get that apart. Gonna have to torch off the old shock mounts and then grind off these and relocate them. I've read that some of these had problems with the axle tube coming loose from the center housing. I don't know what years, but I think I'll go ahead and clean that up and weld it as well. I'm going to have to pull the whole brake assembly off in order to effectively get to the inside of the pad. So off I go to breathe more grinding dust today. pretty common here in the rust belt area. I don't know if it's showing it. But yeah, the rust underneath that leaf spring mounting pad, it's eating into the housing. This should be a pretty thick housing, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. And as you can see, when you remove those leaf spring pads like I did, you gouge into the housing a bit. So I'll clean all that up and put some beads of weld there to fill those up and grind them back down. Seems to be moving. There we go. Easy peasy. I am back out in the shop this afternoon. I've got a few hours before I gotta go to work. Got the AAM 11.5 moved in here yesterday. Got the sterling out of the way. As you can see, I got the tubes welded to the center housing. Got the gouges welded up and cleaned off. Right now I'm going to pull one of these unit bearings off of this Super Duty 60 and get an idea what I'm going to have to do to re-drill them. Because I am a cheap ass, I'm going to look around here. I got a couple options I might be able to salvage some wheel studs from. That way I can do some measuring and get an idea what size drill bit I'm going to need. I did get the 11.5 in. Unfortunately, I managed to knock the whole frame off the jack stands in the process on my first attempt, and I did not have the camera rolling it for that. So, sorry about that. I decided I had these, what are they, 11.2 by 24 tractor tires and rims out in the shed that I bought a few years back. The reason I've got those on there instead of the gumbo mudders that were on the 78 chassis is because these measure an actual 44 inches tall, whereas those gumbo mudders, even though they say 44 inches, they're not. They only actually measure about 41, 42. And I want the extra height to know what I'm going to have to trim and all that. I think I mentioned it before that I was thinking about using some military surplus 46-inch tall tires. And the only reason I'm thinking about going with those is because they're so cheap. And boy, I kind of hate to go with them at the same time because they're so heavy. But yeah, they're so cheap, but they're so heavy. But they're so cheap. But so these might do for now, just, you know, while I'm building it. And maybe I'll stumble across something at a swap meet or something. Something that's a little more appropriate. But yeah, this vehicle is not going to need that kind of load capacity of those heavy-duty military tires. These two here fit on the AAM fine, but to get the other two to fit on the Super Duty hub, the center hole here isn't quite big enough. So I'm going to have to cut this out just a little bit. That's why I don't have the other hub on yet. It's just going to be easier doing trial fits by stabbing that hub into the wheel center instead of wrestling the wheel over the hub. Okay, so what I've done here is I've trimmed just a little bit out with the torch. It's not going to need much. I've done this before. I don't like taking that center out of a rim if I don't have to, but sometimes you just have to. I've done this before and just left jaggedy, nasty holes and just cleaned up the backside where it seats on the hub. This one, you can see there was kind of a ridge there. I've took half of that out. And I'm going to go ahead and clean it up with the grinder and then give it a test fit. The other one I already did, and I basically did the same thing. You can see there's just a little bit of that ridge that's left there. These are both different wheels. I think the one that's up there right now that I'm working on, it's going to need a little more taken out than this one. I did already test fit this one. Probably before I put it on the chassis, I'm going to go ahead and get in here with a grinder and just smooth all that up, because that does look kind of nasty. There's the finished project. Still, there's a little bit of a ridge layer left. I might just touch it up with a grinder to get it all fairly flat. I'm sure the ridge that's left isn't adding any strength really. The only reason I didn't take the entire ridge out, I wanted to leave as much meat as I could in these areas. I didn't leave the ridge as a point to leave a ridge. It was a good reference point. I cut about half of it out with the torch, and then what was remaining gave me a good guideline of how much to clean up with the grinder to make it consistent. I put a hub in it, and it's not hub centric, and I didn't expect it to be. Not doing it in this way. I guess if you had a really big lathe, you could maybe pull that trick off, but this will do. All right, I think I got it ready to roll outside and give it a test fit of the 57 Ranchero body. My main concern is this cross member here, the way it bulges up on the top of the frame. That might have to get removed and put it in some other type of cross member. Okay, I don't know how well this is showing up. I'm kind of losing my light. I'm really liking the test fit. One thing I've noticed on this 08 frame, and as I mentioned before, when I decided how much to cut out of it, my main consideration was just to get the frame tucked under the body. I wasn't worried about the wheelbase matching the wheel openings because they're rusty anywhere, and I'll just trim them out to whatever I want. But anyway, this 08 frame has apparently tucked the rear wheels in a little bit more forward than the 78 frame, which is not good or bad. But I do notice it. The cross member I was worried about, it does barely touch the body in there. I don't think I'm going to go to the trouble to cut it out. When I build my body mounts, I'll just bring them up another ½ inch or so. Actually, the big 78 tank, there's so much room in here that I could mount it on top of the frame here, and the Ranchero floor will keep it covered up. There's kind of a big old gap there. I don't like that, but there's always going to be trade-offs no matter what you do on stuff like this. I trimmed out the front fenders. If you recall, the front fender originally came down right about here. Cut all that out, give it more room. Looks good. I'm real happy with it. She looks pretty mean.